Newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
There are a lot of very fine first-rate minds in here, but by my experience in this building, none of you have ever been taught the tools by which your mind can work easier on the information you get from the outside world. We concentrate on ideas and the structure of how people think. So memorizing things and writing it down on a test never happens in here at all. It doesn't happen once. You may have tests, but they won't have anything to do with paper and pencil. And you begin to understand how to use these tools, you will have taken a giant step forward to being a powerful, independent human being.
Hey everybody, welcome to School Sucks Live. I am Brett, and with me in the studio tonight we have Corey. How you doing? Go ahead.
Doing okay now.
Yeah, and Osborne.
I also am well, and I'm glad to see Corey back with us tonight.
Yay.
Yeah. Next week is Thanksgiving. What are we doing? Are we going to do a show?
I don't see why we wouldn't.
We have a table big enough for a fine Thanksgiving leftover spread here.
Ooh, leftovers. Yeah.
Yes. We should all go to different family houses, gather leftovers.
My family house is too far away to
Yes.
come back in time.
Right, right.
You can go find some random family house and just, walk in when they're not looking. Take some turkey.
Well, or you could ask. It's a season for generosity.
For giving.
Yeah.
Let's put the giving back in Thanksgiving.
So, guys,
Right.
exciting show tonight, right?
I'm very excited.
Let's give the audience a little bit of a backstory here.
Oh, yes.
We've been doing a series on School Sucks for quite some time now. It actually started several months ago, and I called the series Logic Saves Lives. Because really, there's a lot of irrational thinking, really all throughout time, but especially in the last 100 years, that has killed a lot of people. So we would think that heading that off in the future, if people understood some of the rules of logic and how to spot illogical or fallacious arguments, might help. As I always used to say to my students, good questions stop ridiculous ideas from becoming world religions. So, That's the goal of this series. That's why it has that name. And I want to have fun with it. I didn't want it to be like a logic course, which can be a little bit overwhelming, right? So we did an introduction. We went after Mitt Romney. We went after Coney, 2012. And I think
we went after Bill Maher.
We went after Bill Maher just a couple weeks ago.
In a big way, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a whole show of Bill Maher going after.
Yeah, absolutely. And this week, I want to talk about a group of fallacies, usually under the umbrella term, the fallacy of omission.
Oh, yeah.
But in a fun way, right? Now, fallacies of omission or anything, as the name suggests, that leaves out necessary information to have a full understanding of a certain topic, or when a logician or a propagandist purposely misdirects people away from information that they would need to have a complete picture of whatever the subject is.
Yes.
Now, I didn't know how to go about doing this, but there were some very exciting developments over the course of the last week. I think I was driving, had my iPod, and I was listening to Free Talk Live. I actually just called Free Talk Live before the show to talk about this. And I also asked a friend of ours, friend of the show, a guy named Alan Murdoch, from the skepticallibertarian.com. He was on the after show with Brian Hagan and I when we spent an hour and a half analyzing Alex Jones.
Wow.
And Alan joined us for some of that. So I said, Alan, we're doing a big topic tonight that you might be interested in. But he said he's not an expert on this topic. But none of us are.
No.
How could you be?
No, that's the thing.
If I was an expert on this topic, I'd be making my own documentaries.
I think that's the appeal of this topic, though. And that's the appeal of a lot of conspiracy. How could you be an expert? And we're going to elaborate on that a little bit.
And I think people find it very liberating to discover that you don't have to be an expert on something in order to have an opinion.
But can you become an expert by watching documentaries on YouTube?
Well, you can become somebody who thinks they're an expert on something, but you need to evaluate the methodology that the filmmakers use in making their argument, And
but first, you have to look up what methodology means.
Indeed. Yeah, it's a process. It is a process.
And that's where, most people just stop there.
So you're right. Yeah, you're right. They
Most
really
people won't even look a word up if they can help it.
Well, I would say that we do get a fair amount of training in intellectual apathy. So it is nice if
absolutely.
people will provide answers for us, That's ideal.
That's why, when I used to work in an office, my office mates would often ask me how to spell something or what a word meant.
Yeah.
And why are you asking me? You're sitting at a computer that is connected to the internet. You could have found this out in less time than it took me to chastise you for not finding out for yourself.
It was an excuse to talk to you.
You don't need an excuse to talk to me.
They thought they did. They're shy. Another thing, our social skills are a little distorted after we leave these schools that we spend 15,000 hours in.
One of my coworkers once showed me a picture of a platypus and said, "Do you know what kind of animal this is?" Like she had just discovered the platypus for the first time and thought she had a gotcha moment.
She should make a documentary
What
about how the
hell
CIA
kind of
created the platypus
Yeah.
to finish the statement.
Well, I
Go.
will say that the topic that we're talking about tonight is very controversial, very exciting. And I do want to treat it, I do want to approach it with humility and politeness. And I don't
We're
think
trying something new.
As usual, I will not.
And Osborne doesn't have to. But I don't want to hack my way through the typical, oh, isn't it stupid that people believe this? What's wrong with them?
I don't think it's that stupid to believe it.
Because the conspiracy theory that we are going to talk about is the one that I want to believe more than any other conspiracy in the world.
Right.
Back to Free Talk Live. I'm in my car, have my iPod on. A caller brings up this idea about the Apollo mission hoax. Now, this is a common theory that the NASA could not get to the moon.
Right.
Right. So that these moonwalks and the lunar lander, that all that footage was done in on a soundstage somewhere.
Right.
But the delicious additive to the story was that one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, Stanley Kubrick, who, we could just go on and on about how great he is, the work he's done.
You could. I could not.
You're not a fan?
I can't say that I am or I am not. I just don't understand him.
I find him to be hit or miss, personally.
He's over my head.
Oh, yeah, he's over my... yeah, but I think... See, the storytelling, like 2001, who knows? Right? Call in. We have open phones all night, 843-JOIN-SSP, Skype in, School Sucks Live. If you want to participate in any part of this conversation, our only rule is that we would like your calls to be on topic tonight, because this conversation could go in a lot of different ways.
And it's going to be so fun.
Oh, yeah. All right, so the caller says that there's a movie, a documentary, he calls it, and it's called The Shining Code. Now, for some reason in 1980, in the late 1970s, Shining was released in 1980, right. Kubrick thought this might have been his last movie. And what he was going to do, he had other interests. He was a kind of a Renaissance man. So he wanted to embed a confession into The Shining that he participated in the hoax of the Apollo missions. Now,
right.
At this point, I'm in my car, driving to my brother's house. I start speeding, right? I get there, I grab my brother Blake by the arm. I say, we're watching a movie. Grab the kids.
I also did this, except I was at my desk, so all I had to do was click a button.
Now, of all the conspiracies, like I said, this is the one that I want to believe the most, that the Apollo missions were a hoax, right? So what do we call that? When we want to believe something before we actually do the research. This is called confirmation bias.
Right.
Very popular. Media empires have grown up around people's needs to satisfy their confirmation bias. Fox News exists for that purpose. And New York Times has been around for a long time, but like just a television equivalent would be MSNBC.
Right.
I'm a liberal or a conservative. I want to hear people, who look like they know what they're talking about because they're on television.
Except they agree with me.
Yeah, say the same things that I do and say, oh, I knew I was right. That's confirmation bias. I have that in this case. We'll pick this up in just a minute. This is School Sucks Live, 843-JOIN-SSP, Skype in, School Sucks Live. Please join our conversation. This is going to be a fun one.
If you want to move to the free state.
And we're clear. What do we want to do? All right, so I think we should make sure we know where we're going in the next segment here.
Okay.
I think we should talk about the plausibility versus provability.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about why this is all entirely plausible.
Right.
And I'll put in my conspiracy, and then we'll give the backstory. We'll set the scene. I can talk a little bit about what was going on at that time. You guys can chime in however you want on that.
James in the chat brings up about we were talking about earlier the NASA giving Kubrick a special camera lens.
Ask him if he can get a source for that. That would be ideal.
He references a man named Jay Widener. For more on this.
Red Ice Radio. That's the clip I had opened.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
All right. So
we were actually, James, we were watching that before the pre-show.
James, spoiler alert, we do not believe this. I want to.
I'm not going to say I don't.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that.
I don't disbelieve it, but I don't believe it because of anything I saw in the Shining Code.
Like I believe that there's salami in the fridge at home waiting for me to eat. I don't know that I'm not going to stake my life on it or anything, but I think it's there. I believe it's there. I don't
Ultimately,
have any proof
at the end of the
it.
day, it doesn't make much difference.
Oh, if you've never watched our live show before, we are on the radio, so we take breaks every 10 minutes, and we just do this chat. And, you can participate in our chat at schoolsucksproject.com/live. If you want some kind of comment read on the show, that would be the place to put it. Whoa.
Ustreamer 089 correctly points out that this is the only way The Shining makes any sense. Otherwise, it's just a horrible movie for no reason.
Wow.
Nicholas, if you want to call in sometime, give us like a segment to go over this. I see you're writing in the chat, or you're writing to me in Skype right now. If you want to give us, I have a feeling tonight might be kind of explosive. Let's see. Someone else says, how do I access the live show?
Go to ustream.com.
Oh, never mind. Found it. Okay. Nicholas, I'm trying to. Nicholas, before you call in, give us one more segment to talk about that, because what you just wrote about the rocket, we're going to cover that. Oh, I'm excited.
So what is the response to the humans couldn't survive going through the Van Allen belt?
The only comment that I've ever seen from Van Allen himself, and it was like in 1958, and there's nothing else I could find on it. The time period that he said would be like you would die was 2 days.
Oh.
And I think through the belt it's an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
But then there's other times where they went up like 450 miles, because like all of these other missions, Gemini, Columbia, they never went more than like 300 miles.
Right. The space shuttle doesn't go that high.
Yeah, the Van Allen belt I think is
100.
I think it's 1,000 miles.
Yeah, 1,000 miles up. Everything, the Mir space station, the Hubble Space Telescope, the space shuttle, all orbit below that.
Right.
Content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
Hey everybody, this is Brett. Welcome back to School Sucks Live. In the studio with me tonight, Corey and Osborne, and we are just about to get into our topic. We previewed it a little bit in that first segment. I had mentioned this film, The Shining Code.
Film is a strong word for that, but yes.
Well, boy, was I excited, right? And my brother and I, we sat down to watch it. And in 5 minutes, we were both in tears. Like, he was in tears of laughter, and I was in tears of sadness. Because I said, if this is the only evidence that Kubrick participated in the Apollo 11 And the subsequent Apollo missions, all the way up to 17, I think.
Yeah,
It might have been the last one that they did the moon.
They made that movie, Apollo 18, about the final moon mission that nobody knows about.
Yes.
Because everybody died because there was alien.
With Colin Hanks and Jack Black.
No.
We are film experts on this show, by the way, too.
Wow.
If you're impressed.
So I, on the other hand...
You and I are talking about two totally different movies.
Oh. Go ahead, Osborne.
Oh, I was just going to say, I, on the other hand, cried tears of boredom after 5 minutes and had to turn it off. And I did read the summary page, which I'm saying 2 minutes, you can read the summary page, whereas the gentleman on the so-called documentary takes 47 minutes to read the same information.
It looks more like a PowerPoint presentation than a movie.
Okay, so we have a theory about how this film was actually developed. Now, Osborne suggested this in the pre-show.
Yes.
Now, I'll just give the moment in the film, and then you can go over the theory. That sounds good.
Okay.
All right. This movie, there's a version that's 47 minutes. There's a version that's an hour. It's called The Shining Code. Again, on YouTube for free. In either version, there's one scene that lasts about 3 minutes, where Danny, the boy, and we're just going to assume that everyone is familiar with the story of The Shining. It might be a good idea if you're listening to the podcast in the future to pause this and just get a synopsis of the film if you haven't seen it, or pause this and watch the movie. No reason why you couldn't do that.
Why not?
But Danny the boy is sitting on a rug playing with cars, and the pattern on the rug is in shapes that is suggestive of the shape of the launch pads in Florida.
I guess.
It's a similar shape. It's like maybe octagonal. And he slowly stands up, and he's wearing a sweater that has a rocket on it. Now that maybe you could dismiss, but the rocket says Apollo 11 on it.
It does.
Then
it's only the most famous rocket in the world.
Yes.
Why would a kid have a shirt with that on it?
Danny walks to room 237, a change that Kubrick made from Stephen King's book, The Shining. It was room 217 that he went to. Now, Stephen King fans hate this movie because it doesn't follow the book. Right. There's all these weird aberrations that a lot of them argue hurt the story as it's told in the movie. Whatever happens in room 237, which is just about the distance from the Earth to the moon, 237,000 miles, Danny, who the filmmaker of the Shining Code claims represents one version of Kubrick, Jack Nicholson represents the other version of Kubrick, leaves room 237 and will not talk, as if he has been silenced. This is an extremely compelling piece of evidence. But what's the problem, Osborne?
I don't know if it's a problem or not, but my speculation is that someone was watching this movie, saw this particular scene that you just described, and said, now I am going to go hunt for every little thing that I can possibly connect to Apollo 11 and promote this theory.
Right.
That I have, that I just developed based on this one thing that I saw.
Right.
Now, how long ago did this guy make this movie?
Within the last few years, I would say.
Because I've been hearing that Kubrick was, I've been hearing the rumors about the faking of the moon landing and that Kubrick was involved in it for a very long time.
Yes.
For many years.
Yes. And,
Yeah, so he probably already had it in his mind.
Well,
right?
I don't see how anyone who doesn't already think the moon landing was fake would look at that movie and go, holy shit, the moon landing is fake.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're saying that's not going to be the clincher for anyone?
I don't think so. I wouldn't think so. But then again, there's all sorts of different people out there.
Right. So we have to, I think, provide some context for this. Now, what Osborne is describing is there is a trigger. There is something that is very compelling. And maybe what there's already murmurs and a little bit of buzz about as a theory. And then from there, the person operates on confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, I decide what I want to believe. I'm going to go misuse the deductive method where I come up with a general principle and then I find things that will hold it up. Right. I will go hunt and it gets really, really silly. This movie is almost like a parody of a conspiracy. It was like something that you would see on South Park, right? As they're parodying a conspiracy.
Right.
The connections are so far-fetched and just loose. Like all of these representations of the number 11.
Right.
To see how this shot is framed, where you could clearly see that these two things, like the things in every door,
right?
These
things,
yeah, that are cut. Well, the panels in every door
that exist on every door ever.
Okay, so he's finding all these 11s.
Yeah, there's two trees in this shot. They make an 11.
Right.
What does Scotman Carruthers represent?
Whoa, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay. Sorry.
But all these 11s, right?
Right.
So every time we see up and down structures, which there happen to be a lot of indoors.
Wait, never mind. We weren't going to do this.
Do what? Oh, we weren't going to get silly.
I was going to say, does this mean that the Spinal Tap movie is also about the Apollo 11 moon landing? Because they make a big fuss over the amps that go up to 11. 11.
No, listen. We can rip this Shining Code movie to shreds, and we should, because it's crap.
Okay.
Right? What I said I wanted to treat respectfully was the ideas that Kubrick was involved and that the Apollo missions were a hoax. That I think deserves respect, because I think it is just as plausible as the idea that people went to the moon.
Right.
Landed a thing on it, walked, and then got it back off the moon and came home.
Right. Whenever I've had a discussion about the possibility of the moon landing being fake, people say, well, why would they fake a moon landing? And I think the better question is, why would they go all the way to the moon if they didn't have to?
Right. I'm an economist, right?
Yeah.
So the inner economist in me wants to believe that they did not spend all that money sending a rocket to the moon for no reason. That someone pocketed that money and used it for something more worthwhile, like booze and hookers. Or
one of the ideas is that this is the money that this money was all funneled into the military-industrial complex, and that the whole space race itself between the United States and the Soviet Union, and we're going to get to the backstory. We're going to give you some context of the plausibility of this theory. But the space race was kind of representative of the defense race to see who was going to be the preeminent superpower, right? So before we do that, I think we should lay down a contextual picture, and we're going to do that in just a minute. Our chat is lighting up. People are writing to me on Skype with their comments. I think this is going to be an exciting night. We actually wanted to cover a whole different topic, but oh man, can you imagine doing a whole show about the moon landing?
I can.
We can do it.
School Sucks Live. We'll be right back.
Take control of your money today and do it with style.
All right, so I didn't check off one thing from my list. That segment.
It's a good segment, though.
No, yeah, it's we're moving along.
Don't Tread on Me is the only place where you can get your hands on silver dime trading cards with the most unforgettable designs, like Clint Eastwood's.
All right, so we did confirmation bias. We covered that. All right, so the whole plausibility versus provability thing we need to deal with. Why is it so compelling? Why is it so ripe for conspiracy theory? And then I'll kind of lay the groundwork for the context of like what was the situation at the time with the Soviets, with the country, the promise of JFK, and you guys can add whatever you want to that.
Okay.
And then we'll start talking about conspiracies more generally, and we'll get into the omission fallacies.
Okay. Sorry, I said shit before. I forgot myself.
I think it's okay.
I spent the afternoon doing an SLA show where we coined a new phrase to describe internet trolls.
What?
Cunt hammer.
Cunt hammer. Oh, I never say that.
Because we needed a word for internet trolls that was like less acceptable. Like people can be proud of being an internet troll, but it's going to be a lot harder to be proud of being a cunt hammer.
You know, Celestina and I were talking about like we're doing a role playing game. Bunch of us.
Oh.
And
sounds hot.
No, it's like a superhero like comic book role playing game.
Oh.
And I've never done it before, but I feel like my character is just like kind of disengaged, like unavoidably from the whole storyline, despite I think your best efforts. And I don't really know how to do. He's because it's a super. They're all superheroes, right? And they're battling an alien invasion. And mine is my superhero is the Lizard Jew. That's the and I came up with it like to be funny, but then it had to fit the story. And we are talking today about another character, maybe?
Yeah.
Now, Cunthammer is very appealing, but also chosen for the sole purpose of being funny. But I like the word hammer.
Then we could spin you and Matt, your characters, off into your own book, and it would be Cunt Hammer and Fear Boner.
I like where
It's
this
really
is going.
hard to turn down that title.
Yeah.
The Adventures of Cunt Hammer and Fear Boner.
Yeah.
Serialized on LRN.FM.
That Matt is a gas. He's funny.
He's a very funny dude.
Matt who?
Matt Leftwich?
Yeah, he's
Oh,
real
yeah.
funny. He's very sharp-witted. Last night,
So
everyone
I
missed
ju-
his joke last night when he goes, you were like setting the scene,
Yeah.
or no, Owen was setting the scene, and it's like, and then you hear a voice, and Matt goes, "Dearly beloved."
No, I caught it.
I laughed for a minute.
We are gathered here today to celebrate this thing called...
What were you going to say, Osborne?
Oh, I have just been made aware of probably the newest conspiracy theory
Yeah.
that General Petraeus
Yes.
was this scandal he's involved in is a cover up so that he will not be able to testify about the Benghazi incident.
I believe it.
Oh, I've heard that already. Yeah. I believe it. How would the fucking director of the CIA not be able to keep his own affair a secret?
Yeah.
He should know all the tricks.
And this is he's a guy who presides over an organization that tortures people. And like a fucking extramarital
It
affair is like too much for
disappears
his
people.
conscience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rendition.
Yeah, it's
But he banged his biographer.
Who doesn't though?
I'm gonna bang mine.
Yeah.
That's the right attitude.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. Hey everybody, this is Brett. Welcome back to School Sucks Live. We are cruising right along, but we want to get you involved in this conversation. People have contributed to our chat, and I've gotten a couple private messages on the Skype. But
really?
Any pictures?
there's a picture of this man, but I think it's just his Skype ID, and it's just his face. So we'll see where the night goes. But we were kind of trying to lay some contextual groundwork for why this is so plausible, this moon landing hoax thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before I get to that, I do want to say that I often feel with conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorists, and I'm not dismissive of the concept generally. History is conspiracy. Right. We have a book right here. I'll put it up if you're watching our camp show, The Underground History of American Education by John Taylor Gatto. This is a textbook size proof of the fact that multiple facts that people have conspired at different times for different reasons to control the public mind. Conspiracies are real.
Right.
History is conspiracy. But I think a lot of times people see plausibility, right? And they think that the road to provability is a smooth and a short one from there. Everything that has been introduced to us about the moon landing hoax theory is entirely plausible. It makes perfect sense. It almost makes too much sense. Like I said, don't let my confirmation bias distort this, because I really, really want to believe this. But let's set the stage. What was going on at this time period? Well, after World War II, the Cold War escalates, and it's really hot into the 50s and getting really, really hot into the 1960s.
Oh, yes.
Now, the Soviets were the first to space. The Soviets were the first to orbit the Earth, their Sputnik program. I think they had even landed a probe on the moon, unmanned. They were the first to get one of them monkeys in space,
Right.
which is a big... you want to put an animal up first?
They put a dog up first, and then a monkey.
Oh, okay. So they had two animals in space before the United States had any.
I don't. Yeah, I think it was even more than that. I know they put a dog up first. The first animal they put up was a dog.
Yeah.
And I think they might have done a cat, and they did a chimp, and then they did have a human orbit the Earth, and then they had the first spacewalk as well, the first extra vehicular activity.
Yeah.
In space.
Now they had Yuri Gagarin, who he was the first man in space. I think he died in some kind of aeronautical accident shortly after that. Yeah, Yuri Gagarin. Trivia. We didn't do trivia during our breaks yet tonight, but Yuri Gagarin was the first human in space that we know of. So, like I said, this is representative of how the arms race is going to go, right? If
the United States was getting smoked in the space race.
So if they have this superior technology, you know, how in danger is the country? You know, and at this time, we've already had the Cuban Missile Crisis when they were moving nukes into this hemisphere.
Right.
And early in the 1960s, John F. Kennedy, one president who I don't think was a terrible man, makes a promise or a play. I guess, you know, he's committed to this idea that the United States will put a man on the moon.
Man on the moon.
By
1970.
That's what he says.
Almost exactly like that.
He also said, we will go to the moon and do the other things.
Yeah.
Not one of his best quotes.
No, I think, well, out of context, he might have listed a bunch of other things before that.
Yeah.
And then out of context, it just makes no sense.
Yeah.
Or it always sounded to me like he just kind of forgot what he was going to say. We will go to the moon and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Right. So this, and then he's assassinated, and there's all this emotional baggage of that. And I think him and his brother were decent men, considering where they had come from and what they were.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, I mean, they had that appetite for power. They were not particularly faithful to their wives.
And I don't know why that's always the thing that is the last straw.
Yeah.
Like the presidents of the United States senators, heads of the CIA, they do a lot of terrible things, and it's always the fact that, oh, he cheated on his wife.
Yeah. Yeah. But if there's any president that I don't have complete disdain for, it's JFK.
Okay.
But he makes this promise. We're man on the moon by 1970.
Yes.
So they got it in there just at the nick of time, July 1969. Right? So that's one aspect of it. There's two aspects. We have the Soviet arms race,
right?
Which is the whole space race is just representative of. It doesn't matter like what we're going to spend all this money to get rocks, you know.
Well, there was also a very specific fear that the Soviets were going to build like an orbital platform that could drop nukes on us.
Yeah, and they say that this is also the genesis for the United States. That NASA was the genesis of the Star Wars program that was talked about so much in the 80s.
Yes.
Now, the often overlooked factor is the socio-political condition of the United States in the late 1960s.
Yes.
Right? So we have the Vietnam War. We have all of the protests, the anti-war movement, the embattled presidents, Johnson and then Nixon. We have the civil rights movement. Within 18 months of the moon landing, you have the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King a few months earlier. These were considered to be like the last great hopes for that generation.
Right.
You know, both cut down. And I don't know how much suspicion there was about those assassinations then. I don't know how much suspicion there was about the Kennedy assassination. I would think that people were generally similar to how they are today, that they basically believed what
they were told.
Authorities told them.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was a lot of fervence.
Right.
In American culture. Is that a real word? Fervence? There was a fervor.
There was a fervor.
There was a fervor in American culture.
I'll go with that.
And this event united everybody. People talk about national pride. I don't know why you get credit for somebody else's accomplishments because they're on the same landmass as you, but that was a thing.
The same reason you refer to your entire country as we.
Yeah, and it diffused. Only temporarily. But if it had not happened, you know, how much faster would things have escalated and where could they have gone?
Right.
considering everything that had preceded that event in the 1960s. But this seems to diffuse a lot of the tension, and it provides at least a moment for people to pause and say, yeah, we did something good. And it also relieves all of that collective anxiety about the situation with the Soviets. So it has all these benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Year prior, what's this fantastic movie that comes out?
2001.
Space Odyssey.
A Space Odyssey.
One of my all-time favorite movies.
That's
Thoughts, feelings?
I have never seen it.
You're kidding me. We should watch it right now.
Kid you not.
Does the audience mind in the chat? Do you mind if we watch 2001 Space Odyssey? If you're not watching us on video, I don't know how good it'll be because there's only 20 minutes of dialogue in the whole movie.
Yeah, the rest is just weird spaceship background noise.
Nice music.
Oh, yeah.
Good score.
Well, not so much a score as a bunch of classical music pieces.
Sure, yeah, you're right. That's
He
not a
didn't
score.
actually
'cause it
end
was
up
not-
writing a score. He liked his temp track so much that they didn't bother writing a score.
He used to play music on the set, too. Like, if you've ever seen, and one of the things that I watched in preparation for tonight's show was a documentary that Vivian Kubrick, his daughter, made behind the scenes about The Shining.
Right.
You know, because what I wanted to see is if it was identifiable, any kind of methodology. Is he going out of his way to set things up a certain way? Which, I mean, you could tell if you're rewriting parts of the script, which he was doing every day. You see him sitting there with a typewriter, rewriting things and handing it to Jack Nicholson, and Jack Nicholson saying, I guess we just make this up as we go. A very frustrating movie to work on. Aside from Kirk Douglas, I don't think any actor ever worked with Kubrick more than once.
Huh.
Because he was very, very demanding, and he pushed people. You see Shelley Duvall, who played Jack Nicholson's wife in the movie, like practically in tears. Her hair is falling out on the set. His methods were interesting, and I don't think a lot of actors were too fond of the process.
Maybe he's why Tom Cruise went crazy.
School Sucks Live. We'll be right back.
Do you want to support good people who disobey bad law?
About how that Eyes Wide Shut movie was made. It was just insane. Like, it had
We should make a movie. The Eyes Wide Shut Code.
I'm sure there. No, that's one thing. That was one thing that.
Cruise became a Scientologist.
Hey, Nicholas, hold on. Wait, what did he say? I'm just reading this. Nicholas, can you confirm that I can read your chat to me on the air? If you're still listening. Nicholas links to the same guy anyway that we were watching on Red Ice Radio. Beyond the Infinite, Kubrick's Odyssey. And you made your full point, Osborne, about the movie was just confirmation bias around. Okay, we did that. We have one more segment in hour one, and then we can. I think we're going to have to take this into hour two a little bit, and maybe the second topic into the after show. Oh, I set up a page on Freedom's Phoenix. Doubled my web traffic in a day.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Ernie gave me like a special edition.
Yeah, you told me that.
What a great guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I can hear him in the background reading the script of The Matrix. But yeah, we talked the other night, and I didn't want to do anything with it until we had a new website. But at this point, I'm like, maybe I should put some. So I just put like the American Way video and like the podcast that went with it up on his site, and that was a good idea. Alan Murdoch. Okay.
Get any new subscribers out of it?
I've actually gotten. I lose 2, gain 2. I think we're at 97 or 98. Oh, Mickey subscribed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Corey's friend. I would call him my friend too. He's a really good guy. He was on our first live show. He called in, and then we did the after show.
Yeah, I was watching at home.
The first after show ever.
He told me the other day, like, Celestine had recommended that he listen to Sex Lives Now some time ago before she was doing the show.
Yeah.
And then he finally got around to it. He's like, oh, hey,
Delivered in the way you prefer.
He had
You
no
can
idea
sign
she
up
was
for
on
our
it.
email updates at updates.lrn.fm. Plus, you can stay in the loop by joining our Facebook profile
Stickers.
at facebook.lrn.fm or follow us at Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm. It's all free, so sign up now at updates.lrn.fm for news updates delivered to your email box, facebook.lrn.fm to follow our Facebook page, and twitter.lrn.fm to receive our tweets.
I've been told no.
Maybe Nicholas is not there anymore. Osborne, anything interesting in the chat?
No.
Is there any activity?
Yeah.
Good.
Eyes Wide Shut is like getting hit in the balls if you like Kubrick.
Well, somebody else.
What's it like if you don't like Kubrick?
Oh no, Kubrick was working on what? AI when he died?
Is that what the movie was called? Yeah, the one that Spielberg finished.
Took over.
Oh God.
I'm sure there's a story with Eyes Wide Shut, and I'm sure Kubrick brushed elbows. I was actually talking to Richard Grove about this maybe like 6 months ago. That there is a story to Kubrick, that I think is worth telling.
Now I'm going to have to rewatch AI and look for the Apollo 11 clues in AI to find out why the government had to kill him before he finished that movie.
Visit the Liberty Radio Network
back.
program guide to find out at shows.lrn.fm. That's shows.lrn.fm.
Hey everybody, this is Brett. Welcome back to School Sucks Live. Still here with Corey and Osborne. This is our last segment of Hour 1, and we are moving slowly.
We are broadcasting live from our moon studio.
Whoa.
You can't disprove it.
Anyway, so we're moving, like I said, a little bit slower than we anticipated tonight because we also wanted to talk about another documentary when we realized what a failure The Shining Code was. Like, it's not even fair of us, I think, to take the movie apart because it makes such a weak argument. And it really got me thinking about conspiracies in general and how a lot of conspiracies really rely upon fallacies of omission, which is what we want to talk about in our logical fallacies. So we're going to go through some of the common ones. But before we do that, one of the reasons why the moon landing, the Apollo hoax theory is so compelling. It's so ripe for conspiracy theory, because very, very few people can have the background knowledge, the grammar to really understand enough of the information necessary to be able to evaluate the claims one way or the other.
Right.
Well, yeah, combine that with how they so strictly control media access to the operation as well. So you throw up the veil, and you say, "Hey, we're doing this stuff behind the veil." Well, of course, everyone's going to think you're pulling one over on them.
I think that's certainly part of it too. But like, if people don't have the background knowledge, you would need to be an expert on radiation. You would need to be an expert on physics. You would need to be an expert on aerospace technology, even photography, because most of the what drove most of the conspiracy theories about the moon landing being fake, first and foremost, the photography, I think, was what people felt was like a giveaway, right? There's all these anomalies in the photography. And again, once people found one thing that they couldn't explain, they shot right down that road from plausibility to provability.
Right.
And that was one of the fallacies of omission right there. When you say, well, if you can't explain this, the appeal to ignorance, if you can't explain why this is there, then I get to say that this is clearly fake.
Right.
Which is a logical fallacy. But we have things like the photography. It appears as if there's shadows that go in different directions, right?
Which would indicate multiple light sources, like on a movie set.
With
a moving flag.
Yeah. Now, the flag's another one. But why would all the light be going in one direction? Why are all the shadows going in one direction?
Because there's only really one light source if you're standing on the moon, and that's the sun.
Sure. But we only have like one light source during the day on Earth, and shadows are not parallel.
No, but like two people standing next to each other are going to have their shadows cast in the same direction.
That depends on how close together they are. That depends on how far away they are from the light source. In fact, if you would see that the light coming from behind them will cast a shadow that at first might appear to be somewhat parallel, but as you follow the line to the vanishing point, they should actually at some point off in the distance, even though the shadows are not that long, if you followed the lines, they should converge.
Yeah.
Right. So if you put a light source really close to something, and you guys can test this at home if you're listening. If you put a light source real close to like a couple of objects, you'll see that the shadows from those objects appear to spread out away from each other. But if you use a light source very, very distant, like the sun, you could put a couple objects next to each other, and you see that because the light source is further away, the shadows will actually start pointing towards each other. Now, if you have a shadow that's going at like two shadows that are at 90-degree angles of each other, that's a little bit harder to explain.
Yeah.
But another problem, aside from the shadows, was the resolution of the film, right? So a lot of these pictures that were available that circulated on the internet, in 240 resolution, 360 resolution, and people said, oh, there's these little X marks on the film, like to measure like distances, I think.
Yeah.
And sometimes it appears that they're like in front of the objects, and sometimes they're behind the objects. Like there's one with a flag, right? And it looks like they should always be in front of everything because they're printed on the film.
Right.
But one, it appears to be behind the flag. But it's just the fact that the flag is blown out. The light of the flag is blown out.
That doesn't even make sense.
The low resolution of the film. What about the flag?
What is that? Is that person then claiming that those X's are not actually printed on the film, that they're somewhere on the set and they accidentally placed the flag in front of one of them?
No,
I don't even understand how that's
no,
supposed
the idea is that they doctored the photo after the fact, or they combined two pictures somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, but again, that's the argument appeal to ignorance, right? Saying, well, if you can't explain this, I get to say this other thing.
Right.
So the other one is the flag. What's the story with the flag? And what we're talking about was the movie, because after we got away from the Shining Code, I took a very disappointing walk away from that and suggested another one that we all watched called
A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon.
A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which
narrated by Queen Elizabeth I, as far as I can tell.
And I still don't believe that Queen Elizabeth talks. I don't believe that royal people talk.
No, she does.
I think they're too inbred. Too many
Yeah,
generations.
I must say, I watched
inbreeding.
that today.
Yeah.
And I soaked up every single thing that they talked about, other than the weird Bible talk.
The weird succession of Bible quotes.
But
and you know what I really did love actually was the montage. They were saying it was like an old. It was like some kind of a jazz standard song that I'm actually not familiar with about going to the moon. I want to say it was "Fly Me to the Moon," but it wasn't. It was something similar. But they played it over a montage of just rockets crashing back to Earth.
Well, yeah, so that's how they start the movie, right? It's just government being government, right? Where you show $1 million things blowing up, and they're like, "Ooh, build another $1 million thing."
How do these guys get anything right?
So, like, they never could have done this because look at all this stuff that blew up.
Right.
Right? You don't have any indication of where that footage is. That footage could be from the early 50s, some of it. Right? So it's misleading. And there's also
stacking the deck.
This emotional appeal. They're using Bible quotes. Yeah, stacking the deck is another example of an omission fallacy where, now, folks, if you're just joining us, I so want to believe this is true. I cross my fingers and close my eyes, and I want to believe that the Apollo missions are a hoax. And that Stanley Kubrick, I want to shout that from the hilltop. Stanley Kubrick directed them. I want a T-shirt that says it with a picture. But unfortunately, reason at this point doesn't allow it. And that's why I want to keep the phones open. If you have evidence, if you have something that can be convincing. Osborne, you say that you felt like the arguments that were made in that film.
Yeah, it made sense to me because I had no way of disproving it. They're talking a lot about photography and whatnot, and I have no reason to know anything about that.
But that's, I think, part of the plausibility and the longevity of this conspiracy is that it's very difficult to disprove because, like I said before, very few people have the background knowledge necessary to evaluate it. Like they say, oh, a flag blows. You see this flag flapping around. That clearly shows that there's wind. Well, the flag has an aluminum pole in it. Right. Now, if you stick an aluminum pole in hard ground, the pole's going to go bum, 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 like that. And
especially
if there's no gravity,
if you're twisting the pole too.
Yeah, and then there's no
twist it with your hand, it's going to flap around a little bit.
So there's no gravity, there's no air resistance, there's nothing to stop it or slow it down under the conditions that we normally observe. So it might look like it, waves back and forth because of the vibration of the pole. I mean, you can explain it either way, or you can say, yeah, it was a soundstage and they had the air conditioning on, right? So there's really no...
Because no one while they were filming would have noticed, hey, the flag is moving. Maybe we should,
Right, yeah. There are suspicious things like there is no telescope powerful enough in the world, they say, to see the flag on the moon.
Wait, I don't get it.
They say that there is no telescope powerful enough in the world that could show you the...
So what they're saying is no one can confirm whether that flag is actually there.
Right. So the unfalsifiability in this case goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
why didn't they use their, like when you're at the beach and you draw pictures in the sand with your foot, why didn't they make a giant flag in the dust?
So just bring a bigger flag.
Because they didn't do that, they're clearly lying.
Unless they left the air conditioner on the moon on, and then it would blow away.
Right.
Like the flag, get that. All right. So anyway, the flag is another one.
Right.
But because, and then there's the Van Allen radiation belt, which I think starts about 1,000 miles beyond the Earth, and it's kind of
there's two of them, and there's a gap in between them.
Yeah.
But the first one starts about 1,000 miles up, if I remember correctly.
And I believe they were discovered by this Dr. Van Allen in the early days of space exploration.
Hence the name.
Yeah. There's very little that I could find about what he had to say about it, but the claim in all these films is that human beings would die basically as soon as they entered it, so travel more than 1,000 miles away from the Earth is impossible. All subsequent missions after Apollo never went more than 500 miles away.
Right.
But there's more to that story. This is School Sucks Live. Hang with us. Participate in this conversation. We'll be back in just a bit. Okay, everyone, we're on an 8-minute break, so if you want to pee or get a snack or what else do people do?
Cigarette.
Corey smokes cigarettes. He's going to go down and smoke a cigarette. Osborne, are you going to do anything exciting during this break?
I don't think so.
All right. So we're going to leave the broadcast open, but nothing is going to happen. So, you can just look at me during this time. And we'll be back at 11:05. And if you're watching us, I would really, I'd love some participation in this topic. Nicholas, I don't know what happened. Oh, wait, I see Nicholas typing. Hold on. All right, we'll be back.